Oh, hello again. This is the third episode of the Weekly Ward. I'm Dan Ward as usual, and today I got one of my friends, Mike Derczo.
What's up, guys?
We're going to be doing some modern talks, getting in preparation here for Star City Games Cincinnati. I always think the Grand Prix every time I want to go to play a modern tournament.
They do kind of meld together.
Yeah, the big difference I'm looking forward to this year is the $10,000 for Grand Prix. It's such a big difference.
The prizes are much more top-weighted now in the GPs. They're not paying out as far down the standings, but there's going to be much higher prize density if you're finishing in the top 32, top 64.
Yeah, kind of rewarding excellence, I guess, just rewarding better play. In addition to one of the biggest complaints I think they had was a lot of people were frustrated that they were going like X3 and really close to day twoing.
Sure.
So you get the people that maybe not necessarily walk into a tournament and think that they can top 8 or win the tournament, but they just want to gain some experience, get some get to play a little bit more Magic for their money, so to speak. With the prices going up in the entry fees, it at least gives them that second day. So
they've also made silver much more attainable, lowering the threshold to 18 points. So there's definitely a subset of players that travel to the GPs to try to maintain their silver status.
Definitely. All right, well, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about Modern, like I just, preluded to here. We're going to go over some decks. We're going to go over...
some of the new hotness that's popping up online here.
Yeah, this one deck in particular that we'll get into in a little bit here that I'm not too happy of because I keep losing to it.
Yeah, it's a real wild card going into the weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk behind it. And then we'll kind of go over what each of us are going to be playing. Probably. I don't think we're either.
I'm pretty locked. We're both around 85% locked in.
We're pretty locked. Yeah. All right, so let's start off with the deck that's got all the buzz on Moto right now. And it is none other than this deck right here.
It is, there's a couple iterations of it. It's a base black, aggressive Eldrazi deck. What this deck is trying to do, it's trying to abuse some of the soul lands. So in Legacy, you have an archetype called the Stompy archetype, which uses Ancient Tomb and City of Traders to power out resilient threats. There's not a direct analog to those lands in Modern, but with Eldrazi Temple, you have a much more restrictive soul land. And this deck is trying to utilize that alongside with Eye of Ugin to power out some very resilient, reasonably costed Eldrazi.
Yeah, the thing that I really, after playing this deck a couple times, I was really frustrated because if you look at the prices here from MTGO tickets to actual in real life, it's definitely a lot cheaper than a lot of the Tier 1 decks in the format. So the first time I played it, I was like, man, I'm just getting beat by a budget deck. What modern deck has Blight Herder and Wasteland Strangler in it? I couldn't believe it. And, also, I was just, taken back by the fact that, Relic of Progenesis Game 1, Scrambling Claws, I think this one has it in there as well. Maybe not this actual version.
The mono black deck sometimes plays a Scrambling Claws. I think some of them have been going over till Nihil Spellbomb, but the white splash seems to be the most prevalent. The big thing from white is you get Lingering Souls just to run as a powerful card, and then you get some the classic good modern white sideboard cards, primarily Stony Silence and some anti-burn measures.
Yeah, the hand destruction really gives it a lot of it gives it more time. It's in there to stop the combos and also just to slow their opponents down. The thing that, besides the fact that, there's playing so many cards that you're just not used to having interactions with in Modern, this deck is very fast. I've seen, between having the interactions with Urborg and Eye of Ugin, like we've talked about earlier.
That has to be one of the premier interactions of the deck. So Eye of Ugin reduces the cost of colorless Eldrazi by 2 generic mana. So prior to Battle for Zendikar, most of the colorless, or all the colorless Eldrazi, I should say, were 10, 11 mana. Mm-hmm. Now with the introduction of the Devoid mechanic, now we have some 3 and 5 cost Eldrazi where you can get some big savings on them and power them out in the mid to early game.
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating because I'm a Boggles player. Most people know me for that deck. And one of the things that I can say that I really have good interactions with, Tron is not a good matchup. And this deck really reminds me of Tron in a way because of, it's playing ramp. Obviously, it's using the Eldrazi Temple, the Eye of Ugin as its way of their Tron pieces. And being able to put out Blight Herder, like realistically, it can come out on turn 3. And then following it up with turn 3 Blight Herder into Ulamog on turn 4 because of the guys that you have to sash is like a realistic thing. And
in short of even sacking the guys, just a 5-mana 4/5 that brings along 3 1/1s with it is going to destroy any Liliana deck. It's going to stand toe-to-toe with any Jundra Abzan strategies. It's my understanding, I don't have a ton of experience playing with or against this deck, but my understanding one of the primary draws to this deck is you have a very favorable Black-Green X matchup.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's just so many cards that they have a hard way to deal with, per se, Like Abrupt Decay is really, a poor... It just lines up really badly. Liliana, even like traditional Liliana is good.
I mean, you're lucky if you're gonna kill a token. I guess the dream with Abrupt Decay is to like kill a map before you can crack it in this deck.
Yeah, that seems probably right.
Yeah, this deck goes a long way into nullifying anything that Abrupt Decay can do versus it.
You can pretty much, between that and Lingering Souls, like Lingering Souls is another one. One of the things too about like sideboard, Tron matchups. Typically not what I want to be playing with playing Boggles. However, after the sideboard, I always felt like it was a little bit more of a game due to cards like Nature's Claim and Stony Silence.
Sure.
And this, with the Eldrazi, it's like, yeah, they look like artifacts, but they're not artifacts.
Yep.
And if you go turn 2 Stony Silence, it's pretty good against the cards that they need to, the maps. Some of them are, I don't want to say really the relics, but some of them are running maps, some of them are running Mind Stone. There's a lot of different variants of the deck right now.
The Mono Black version is going to be running the Mind Stone.
And so, like, I look at the list here, and I'm like, Stony Silence isn't even good. Like, I think I'd bring it in on the off chance that they have Spellscape. Like, this list has 2 in the sideboard. I've played many game 1s where they've just slammed it.
Yeah, definitely. And Stony Silence, by no means, is game over versus traditional Green-Red Tron. You have to couple that with like a reasonable clock.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're just going to crack their O-Stone and then, pardon me, not crack their O-Stone. They'll just get to, 6 lands and drop a Wormcoil Engine on you.
Yeah, this is true. Well, we got one guy, Wayfarer in 1991, he's talking about Fulminator. You could still get out get Fulminated out semi-frequently, but... so my thing with Fulminator is, like, usually Fulminator's a sideboard card. So, and depending on what deck you're playing Fulminator Mage in, like if you're just putting it in like a Willie Adel's version of like Abzan, you'll have like 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, depending on if you're ready for it that weekend, but you don't really have a way of recurring it. So it's like you're taking your turn 3 to do it, and that's typically what they're going to be, because the matchup's so bad, they're typically going to be using their hand destruction spells on cards like that.
Sure.
Whereas if you had it in like a Grixis version of a deck, and you could Kolaghan's Command it right back, and being able to like pick those things off. The other problem, I think, is, like, yeah, they have Fulminator, but, like, if Blight Herder hits, and then you Fulminator, like, you might just lose to Blight Herder.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, that is Cloud Goat Ranger that gives you mana, too. Like, I don't know. It's just, I just feel like...
I mean, you're casting Blight Herder as a similar rate to the Black-Green and Grixis decks are casting Tasigur, except this is a 4/5 that brings along 3 1/1s with it. So it's like an immediate board presence, and pretty easy to turn on all the processing between your relics. You have the Bajukabad here, you can tutor up with the map. So you get the ancillary benefit of playing the relic, and it's also critical into turning on a lot of your processing with the Blight Herder and Wasteland Strangler.
Okay. Let's go to the sideboard, because we talked about how Abzan is probably the deck they want to play most. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can look at their sideboard and see what they don't want to play. Mm-hmm. All right, so I see 2 Ghost Quarters. The first things that come to mind are maybe the Mirror Match, Tron, Bloom.
Tron, Infect, cheap way to get Inkmouth off the table. It's funny, over the past year, Tech Edge has kind of really fallen by the wayside, and people have realized that against decks like Amulet, against decks like Infect, is that you don't really have the time for them to be getting to 4 lands. You just need to kill what you need to kill with no mana investment and no other restrictions on it. So Ghost Quarter has really supplanted Tech Edge as the kind of Wasteland variant of choice in Modern.
Okay. Next we have Surgical Extraction.
Not hugely played in Modern. I'm guessing so. Grixis. What decks do you want Surgical against?
I think you like Surgical seems like something that it could be paired really nicely with the hand destruction.
Sure.
So like decks like Scape Shift, I think you want it. Living End could be a big one if they happen to have one in their opening hand.
Okay.
Also, it hasn't popped up a lot, but Grizzle Shoal I think still is on a lot of people's radar. Then you have there's just random things like Dredgevine. A lot of these are like not tier 1 strategies, but actually can be like really prevalent that you want to have that card.
I'm wondering, I know it's a bit of dyssynergy with Lingering Souls. I'm wondering if you almost want to run Rest in Peace in this deck.
Okay. I actually could see that. Obviously it works really great with Wasteland.
Sure,
all
it
of the
does.
Eldrazi's.
I mean, relative to the power level of the card, Rest in Peace, it's very surprising how little play that Rest in Peace sees in Modern. Primarily because most of the decks rely on their graveyard to either power up their threats or provide their grindy long game, so that's definitely a feature of Modern.
Card we haven't seen in a long time. Disenchant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. Turns out when you make Naturalize White, or I should say, Disenchant is the OG. When you make Naturalize White, just White having access to that and everything else that White gets, it's a very, very powerful effect. Clean, not flashy, just one of the best design cards ever. Does what it does very well.
Just one of those things that we haven't seen in any black deck in such a long time, because they're playing green, so they have Nature's Claim, they have access to like just better ways of getting rid of things. But what do you think it's for?
So I think it's definitely for the Affinity matchup.
Okay.
I think you're pretty vulnerable to Blood Moon in this deck.
Okay.
Blood Moon shuts off a lot of your Soul Land interaction.
Okay.
So it's a way to blow up Blood Moon and also protect yourself against the Splinter Twin combo.
Which we also see the 2 Celestial Purges here, which looks like Blood Moon as well, and additional obviously has game against Splinter Twin.
Yeah, I don't know how much this deck cares about a Keranos, but typically when you see a Celestial Purge in a Modern sideboard, the primary reason it's there is to be exiling a Keranos.
Okay. Alright, well, moving on from the Disenchant, we see some life gain. We see Rest for the Weary.
I've seen lists that play a split of Rest for the Weary and Timely Reinforcements. Timely is a much more widely played anti-burn, anti-aggro card. But, Rest for the Weary is, it's the white Feed the Clan.
Okay. Alright, so I alluded to the Spell Skites.
Generic catch-all. Great against a bunch of the combo decks. Great against your favorite deck, Boggles.
Yeah, it does shut me down.
Great against Infact. Good against Splinter Twin. It's just one of the premier sideboard cards in Modern, really.
All right. So one of the things that this deck probably has a problem with going down the line here. So I see Disenchant. We talked about good against Affinity. Rest of the Weary, good against aggressive decks. Spellskite, good against some of the combo aggressive decks. Not really toward Affinity. But this guy right here.
Well, you were just mentioning that, you're looking at their main deck and you have access to your Stony Silences and Boggles. You even want to bring in Stony Silences against this deck. Well, it turns out they're playing their own copies in the sideboard.
Yeah, and that just goes to show right now that this deck is going to catch a lot of people off guard. Ari Lax wrote an article. It's on Star City's Premium right now, and he has a video on it. And this is one of the things, when a new deck like this comes out of nowhere, so to speak, people are going to make a lot of mistakes just because they don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I think, this deck is beginning to catch fire and stuff, one of the reasons why we are talking about it. But, yes, typically playing a rogue or new strategy, you definitely get percentage points by some of your opponents not knowing how to interact with you or what exactly you're up to.
Okay. All right, so what do you think? Do you think this is going to be something that this weekend we're going to see a lot of, or just maybe it's going to be a deck that people will play? Do you think a lot of the big names are going to come out with it?
I don't know. Ari put the video up against it. I see some of the pros kind of, murmuring about it on Twitter, but I am going to kind of take a safe position and going to reserve judgment. Also, typically, the online metagame is usually weeks ahead of the real-life metagame. So, for this deck to kind of maybe it's going to be its breakout weekend this weekend. I know some people are saying that this deck is primed to break out at the Pro Tour. We have a whole ban list announcement to kind of take in before that, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. But this is definitely a interesting commodity, and it's something to keep an eye on moving into this weekend and moving forward in Modern.
Yeah, Max, we're going to be going to Star City Games Open in Cincinnati. We're driving out there. We're crazy. A little 10, 11-hour drive on the grind.
Yeah.
NVD. All right, so moving on from this deck, and I really want to just have this deck be banned already, even though it hasn't even hit the scene, because it just beats me up. Like, it has hand destruction, spell skites. It's just not really what I want to be playing against.
I don't know. I think you might have a reasonable matchup against it.
Maybe I just got a little unlucky in the games. Because I was playing against people with deck spell skites.
Yeah, in lieu of spell skite, I mean, your Voltron strategy is going to be pretty good against this.
Okay.
They have all targeted spot removal. They don't play any sweepers like O-Stone. So I think you probably just had a bad run against it. I'm kind of just looking at how the lists line up. I kind of think Boggles has a pretty reasonable matchup here.
Yeah, my strategy is usually the old Build-A-Bear. Go to the Build-A-Bear factory, just build one big guy, and let's go in there. And they don't really have too much answers. The things that really get me are the early Blight Herders. Obviously, Spellskite unchecked is just game for me.
Yeah, an interesting interaction, too. If you don't have a trample effect or a protection from creature effect, they can block sack with an Eldrazi Cyan to kind of nerf your life gain.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. All right, well, moving on to another deck that I don't want to say it's hopped on the scene because it's been around. And in fact, I was really stunned to see Chris Fennell win the Mox with this tournament because I was working on a deck like this. Okay. I like to brew a lot of decks. I know you know me for this, even though I always end up playing Boggles anyway. Yeah. I have a ton of decks modern-wise, and I just brew everything up. And we're talking about, of course, Green-Black Infect. And like I said, I was working nowhere near the exact numbers that of this deck, but I felt that it was in a real good position because of the uprise of Grixis, cards like Phyrexian Crusader.
Yeah, Phyrexian Crusader seems to be a direct reaction to how bad the Grixis matchup is for a traditional Infect deck.
All right, so let's go down the creatures. The 4 Glistener Elves and 4 Noble Hierarchs stay the same.
Yep.
The trade-off is you're losing an unblockable creature for a flyer.
And that's a big deal. I mean, Blighted Agent is markedly better than Plague Singer. The difference isn't as big as I think I'm making it out to be, but it's definitely a downgrade in terms from Blighted Agent.
Yeah, especially because of cards like Lingering Souls, Inkmoth Nexus, and the other Infects, and in the other decks that have flyers.
Even nonsense stuff like Volt Scourges, stuff like that against
Spider Umbra?
Sure, okay.
And the big hitter, here he is, right here.
Yeah, this is the reason to play the black, is Phyrexian Crusader.
Protection from everything that matters.
You can Abrupt Decay it, you can Maelstrom Pulse it, you can kill it with Mono Black removal, but that's about it. There'll be no Kolaghan's Commands, no Terminates, no Path to Exiles, no Lightning Bolts. And it's also, the interaction between First Strike and Infect is very powerful too, especially when you get a Ranker on this guy.
Yeah, typically when you're talking about a 3-mana creature that is a 2/2 that you really can't kill, I think a Geist of Saint Traft.
Okay.
And so this card is kind of like Geist of Saint Traft in the fact that you only got to deal them 10.
That's
and
fair.
Instead of getting a 4/4 flyer, you know what I mean? You're just...
This guy, Geist, I mean, the trick to dealing with Geist of Saint Traft was just blocking with the Grizzly Bear. This guy is definitely much more resilient in combat. Like I said, the First Strike Infect interaction is very, very powerful. Allows him to kind of attack pretty liberally.
Okay. We're going to see much of the same here for the green spells. We have the ground spells. We have a couple less Might of Corrosives, still a lot of Vines, and 3 Become Immense, which is kind of typical 2 or 3 of.
Yeah, and another interesting thing you get here when you run the black is in lieu of the protection effect like Apostle's Blessing, you get kind of a more proactive way of kind of just taking the removal spell with Inquisition of Kozilek. Also, just like a better kind of anti-combo card. I think kind of just like a straight upgrade to Apostle's Blessing here.
Definitely. Like with this deck, a lot of times between your fetch lands and sack lands, your fetch lands and shock lands, you're taking a lot of damage. And against some of the aggressive matches, me testing this a little bit, you can get low pretty quick. And so some of the other aggressive decks in the format can really put a clock on you. So cards like traditionally you'd see Taxiing Probe would be like, yeah, you're filling your graveyard, you're getting you're getting information for free essentially, or for 2 life.
Yeah.
This is just better. Like, it gives you the information, it takes away the one card that you need to take away.
It's a protective measure, and it also grants you perfect information. So really, Inquisition is one of the pillars of the modern format. There's 4 of and a bunch of decks. It's going to be good for pretty much as long as Modern's going to be a format.
Speaking of 4 ofs in some Modern decks, let's talk about Abrupt Decay. What is the thinking behind having 4 of this card? Now, this is a combo deck we're talking about. Combo deck.
Sure. So you're going to be able to clear blockers.
Okay.
I think the big reason here is it's an anti-Splinter Twin measure, right?
I would assume so. I haven't played enough with the deck, at least the blue-green version, to know if Splinter Twin is really terrible.
Yeah.
I know Grixis is really bad, but Splinter Twin, without having Kolgan's Command and having, the hand destruction, it shouldn't be as bad. But maybe, I like to clear the pathway. I like maybe it buys some more time. Yeah. Because with playing a 3-drop now,
sure.
I looked at the land count. They're playing in additional lands. Normally it's 19 lands and a Dryad Arbor, so you're usually at 20. So you have that extra thing, you have that extra little point there, the extra land to be able to hit your 3s.
Yeah, Abrupt Decay is also, it's a divergence from being less all in terms of like the green-blue deck, and just kind of being able to kind of adapt to game states that don't go perfectly and stuff. So I think Abrupt Decay, fantastic card. We were talking about how the Eldrazi deck is kind of designed to kind of make Abrupt Decay bad. You see creatures like Tasigur, Pia, and Kiran making Abrupt Decay bad too. But Abrupt Decay still sees plays 4 of in a lot of decks because it kills Tarmogoyf and it stops the Splinter Twin combo.
Yeah, definitely very good. Okay, 4 Ink Moth is obviously the other poison creature that they're playing. Mm-hmm. So the same amount of creatures. So Plague Stinger. Well, this, obviously with having the Inquisition and having Abrupt Decay, they're actually positioned for a much longer game. As traditionally, in fact, trying to make, you're trying to kill before turn 4 or 5. Where this one, it's like, you know what, we can get some damage in. Maybe we're going to take a look at your hand. We see that you're a little slower. We're going to set up for a big turn or big 2 turns with Crusader.
Sure.
Other card, Rancor here, I didn't really allude to yet. This card's fantastic.
It's a very, very scary card. I mean, Trample, the pseudo-evasion, huge deal, being recursive, inherent card advantage. Fantastic card, Rancor.
One of the things that I do like with having 3 Become Immenses, with adding the hand destruction spells and the removal spells, cutting back on, you see only 2 Might of Corrosives, you see the still 4 ground spells and 4 Vastwoods. I could even see going up to 4 Become Immense.
Okay.
It seems like, I don't know, this isn't as much of like a 2-card combo kill. Like, you're not going to just jam out like in the version that I've been working on with Temur Battle Rage per se, but being able to go bang bang, because if you only have Glistener Elf and then hitting it with Groundswell and Might, you're still 1 point short. Mm-hmm. So having to Become Immense, it seems like this, you're going to get a little bit more incremental damage. Yeah. And the reason why I say the incremental damage, or having the Become Immense instead of being all in on the incremental, is because one of the bigger differences that I see in this list, and I've kind of went with it with mine, is you don't see any Pendlehavens.
You don't. Looking at the list here, I mean, I think I remember seeing on Twitter somebody brought up to Chris that, why aren't you running at least one of Pendlehaven? He said it was just an oversight. So I do believe that there should be at least one Pendlehaven on this list. Something interesting to know as well is Chris has been playing the green-black deck for a while, and in a previous iteration of this deck, he had Grizzly Salvage in. Okay. Now, Grizzly Salvage is a black and a green for an instant. You flip the top 5 cards of your library, and you get to choose a land or creature card and put that into your hand and put the rest in your graveyard. So it's a way to dig for a threat, fill up your graveyard for the Become Immense. I see that he's cut it here, but it's definitely an interesting card in the archetype.
Okay. It does seem pretty good. You'll be able to get whatever you need,
Yeah,
to kill them.
the slots seem pretty tight though.
I could see if you really want to go all in on that strategy,
you
finding
could
the abrupt
probably
decays or shave.
shave one or two abrupt decays, but I think the list is pretty tight here. I do remember very clearly though that he said that it's definitely an oversight that a Pendelhaven is not in the deck.
Okay. The one thing that I could say that makes sense to me why it would not be in there is because if you look at everything else, the only spell you need double green for is Vines. So having that, taking out whatever land you decide to take out to cut that green source really could affect some of the sideboard cards. Like, I know this is double green, so that kind of doesn't make sense, but I mean like Leyline, and the card in the main deck is Crusader. So having a Pendelhaven and not being able to have the second black, since Noble doesn't give you black, is actually relevant.
That's a real cost. I think the upside on one Pendelhaven is still good enough that I think you still want it.
Okay.
But, I mean, definitely a double-costed black spell is, it's certainly not free.
Okay. Let's go to the sideboard. Corpse Cur.
Yeah, I mean, that is the card that kind of jumps out to you as the most unconventional in the whole sideboard. So essentially, it's a Gravedigger just for infect creatures, and it has native infect itself. So, kind of really lets his deck be able to grind. Of note is the converted mana cost on that card is 4. So, opposing abrupt decays are just going to be cold versus this card.
Yeah, this seems, we alluded to the go long strategy that this deck can provide in addition to just being able to still turn 3 you.
Sure.
This card seems great. I don't really have much to say about it. Like, it's just this is probably going to be the last card you play in your hand.
Uh-huh.
And every time you play it, you're going to be able to get something in. Unless, of course, you're playing the deck we talked about first, and they're just going to Relic of Progenitus and play Herder you out.
I think you want the Corpse Cur in every black-based removal matchup.
Yeah, I could see it definitely in the black-based removals. It also is very good in any of the decks that are just trying to kill all your stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think Burn It would be fine.
Okay.
And addicted to Grixis. The thing that Grixis it's not as great is you open yourself up to Kolgan's Command because it is an artifact, but still they're going to have that no matter what. So they're going to be getting a 2-for-1.
Converted mana cost 4. Opposing Inquisitions don't hit this guy either. So
yeah. And a lot of people have moved in that direction because of the
converted mana cost 4 is a very powerful ability in Modern, I must say. I mean, when I evaluate creatures for Modern, the main litmus test that I put them through is can it be lightning bolted and can it be abrupt decayed? So
in your eyes, Slippery Boggles the note because it can't be killed at all. All right, moving on. Nature's Claim,
classic infect sideboard. Why not play a disenchant that costs 1 mana? Because very rarely are you going to be trying to kill with regular damage. It does come up. Some people, I think the green-blue version is going to be trying to kill with regular damage more than this. But it's a 1 mana disenchant in this deck. The downside is pretty negligible.
Okay, Vampiric Link.
Yeah, so we have the color-shifted version of Spirit Link here. Interesting to note, this does not grant the creature a lifelink. This is the old-school triggered version of lifelink. So if you're reduced to 0 in the middle of combat,
you're dead.
This trigger will go on the stack and you will be dead before you can gain the life. The primary, this has got to be an anti-burn card. I think the dream with Vampiric Link is to suit up an opposing Eidolon of the Great Revel with a Vampiric Link.
Okay, yeah.
So that makes all your spells free in terms of a life payment standpoint. And
yeah, it really
makes you gain 2 off of all their spells.
It makes them have to kill it right away.
They're forced into killing their own Eidolon with it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Doomblade. We haven't seen this in Modern. I don't think I've ever seen this in Modern.
Interesting that he chooses to go with Doomblade here. I've heard some people call Go for the Throat the best removal spell in Modern. I think I disagree with that. But good old Doomblade. Looks like this is a concession to the Affinity matchup.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
maybe he's preparing for the mirror.
Okay.
No. So the only thing that I think you're really worried about with this card is you don't want it for Tasigur.
It kills Spellskite, I think, is the big deal.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I guess, it hedges on being able to be another creature removal spell, because with losing the blue, you lose Twisted Image.
Sure.
Which is traditionally in their sideboard, to be able to just kill off the Mana Dorks and the Mirrors and Spellskite.
It's like the 5th copy of Abrupt Decay.
Okay. Fair enough. I like that. Spellskite, I'm not surprised to see.
We touched on it before. Just kind of pillar, kind of cyber card, great catch-all. Most decks are usually going to be playing a Spell Skater too.
You can't get it back with the Corpuscure, though, unfortunately.
No, he doesn't have Infect.
But that would be really good. Creeping Corrosion.
3 of.
Holy.
A lot of people skimp on their affinity hate, usually to their own demise. Sometimes you just got to play your 3 explicit pieces of hate and hope to draw one versus affinity. So the sideboard slots are very, very precious in Modern, but I think devoting 3 explicit affinity cards to your sideboard is good practice.
I really, really, really like Creeping Corrosion.
Sure.
I think...
Not as good as Shatterstorm. Shatterstorm is strictly better. Welding Jar is kind of a thing, but pretty much the direct analog to Shatterstorm in green.
Yeah, definitely if you're allowed to run this card, depending on the green splash or the green deck you're playing, usually you traditionally see it in the junk versions. The people that don't want to be as greedy and run Fracturing Gust, because it just costs 1 more and you could just lose.
Costing one less is definitely big. A special ability. Kind of decks like Scape Shift. Sometimes you'll see the Noble Hierarch kind of little kid Abzan decks play the Fracturing Gust.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to kind of ramp and kind of take advantage of the life gained by Fracturing Gust. I think in a vacuum, Creeping Corrosion is much better than Fracturing Gust.
Yeah, in addition to the only percentage points you gain, I think, by playing Fracturing Gust, I think the gain life is significant, but not big. It's not as big as, I guess, being able to have a card versus a deck like Boggles.
But nobody plays that deck, so...
No one... I don't mean to keep referencing it, but that is one application where I feel
that is the one upside. Usually the life gain is pretty negligible. Affinity is kind of killing you in these big chunks or whatever. Creeping Corrosion, great card.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how this matchup goes. Traditionally, Infect versus Boggles is really good for Infect, but this is different. Obviously, they're running Hand Destruction, which could be worse.
But they're definitely not as explosive.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to test this match out online.
My guess would be is that Boggles is going to have a bit of a better time versus the green-black deck.
But still
just due to the fact that it's just not as explosive as the blue-green version.
And the last card here, Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, so...
What do we got going on with this?
So, aside from the basic anti-graveyard stuff versus stuff like Living End, Grishelbrand, if that deck is still around... I think a lot of people like this card as an anti-Grixis measure. If you look at what Grixis is doing, all the grinding that they're doing is based out of the graveyard. The Kolaghan's Command for Snapcaster Mage, the Jace. So, yes, it's kind of, going to take up 3 or 4 slots in your sideboard, but I know players like Willie Edel are playing it Nobzon too as an anti-Grixis measure. So it's nice to cover your bases if you run into the Living End deck in round 3 or 4. Living End it's underrepresented, but Living End is a very powerful Modern deck.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it brings up a lot of points. It shuts down. To me, it's very good against the things that Inquisition doesn't hit. Mm-hmm. So you brought up Living End. I'll bring up Collected Company combo deck. It's still real. Yeah. What about Storm? No one's talking about it. This is a deck that Pantheon right now has been working on. Okay. Reed played it in Pittsburgh. I seen Owen play it in the Classic in Vegas.
And Johnny Magic, he was doing his yearly Gamers Helping Gamers charity stream, and he's still playing that Blue-Red Storm deck in Modern. So.
Yeah, I think if you're not prepared for that deck, you can definitely get punished, because I think a lot of the good players, I don't want to say if necessarily they're getting ready for the Pro Tour and just trying to get in as many serious games as they can. But I do think a Leyline of the Void is the best way that they can encompass maybe touching 5 or 6 decks that Inquisition of Kozilek, their most controlling card, I want to say, doesn't interact well with. Mm-hmm. So, all right, that's pretty much what I wanted to touch base with the Infect and the Black White Eldrazi. Those are the 2 new decks on the scene, I guess. Mm-hmm. What do we got here?
Click there.
Here we go. We're pulling up. We got Affinity, no surprise to me, 8-0 there.
We're going to go down to the Willie Edel list at 6-2. Another interesting deck Owen had written about this. Where's Little Darwin? And here you go.
Death and Taxes?
Yeah, we'll touch on this real quick. Owen had featured this on his pick of the week. Very rare for Owen to be drawn to kind of a white weenie strategy. I played the Legacy variant, and I have to say, there's not you don't have the premier land destruction. You kind of have to play these synergistic cards like Land and Arbiter to kind of turn your Ghost Quarters into strip mines. I think the big thing that you're missing here from the Legacy version is a card like Mother of Runes. So this looks to be primarily kind of like a blinky you're killing with blinky stuff, and you're kind of trying to attack their mana. I don't know. I'm dubious of this deck trying to compete in a world of Tarmogoyfs and such.
Yeah, like they have their Path of Exiles, and like they're going to be running those for. But I definitely think it is very weak to
cards like Dryad Militant and Judge's Familiar. I mean,
so underwhelming.
Those are pretty tough sells in Modern. Even a card like Thalia, fantastic in Legacy. It can be pretty good in Modern, but I just don't. As a person who loves mono white strategies to begin with, I am not really drawn to this type of strategy. I almost like the version that Craig Wesco top forward the last Grand Prix Pittsburgh with, that was playing the green for Voice of Resurgence, locks it on Smiter. So this is another thing to keep an eye on, but I am dubious of this deck's ability to compete in Modern.
Yeah, we got that one.
It is. Land and Arbiter is quite good against Amulet. So if you're expecting an Amulet heavy field, this looks to be a reasonable choice. But against decks like Grixis and traditional green-black decks, I just don't see how this deck can compete.
Yeah, one of our friends that's normally, he comes on whenever I'm on, Goblin Lackey, he's letting us know that he thinks it's a bad Merfolk deck, and that Rietzel, went from Merfolk to this. So it's got to be something.
It is. It's a bad Merfolk deck with kind of like this weird kind of like pseudo-disruptive element. I mean, I don't know. Bladesplacer, Flicker Wisp, Resto Angel, these are all reasonable cards. I really like the four main deck Kitchen Finks a lot. I think in decks that can cast it, I think Kitchen Finks is a pretty good place to be in the main deck right now.
Yeah, with not ever since GP Polo Allegro, you saw Naya just blow up down there. Mm-hmm. And there's been I don't know, after Pittsburgh and after playing in a couple other events.
There was a Naya and Big Zoo with Collected Company won that event, right?
Yes, Collected Company won that. But there was 3 other variants, and there was, I think, 16 Wild Nicattles in the top 8.
Sure. I mean, some of that might be a regional thing, but in general, there has been more Wild Nicattles popping up in the Modern format recently.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. So touching base on this, we'll go back here.
And then I think we also want to touch on the Willie Edel list too, right? The Abzan deck.
Which one do you want to talk about
Edel,
right here?
Real Edel Genius. Yeah, so this is a kind of traditional Abzan deck. This reminds me a lot of they were called junk decks. This was before the printing of Khans of Tarkir, before Siege Rhino was printed.
To me, they're still junk. Come on.
I mean, I, for one, welcome our new Khan Overlords. I'm fine with the naming convention of Abzan. But when I first really started playing Modern, the first deck that I picked up was Green-Black Splashing Lingering Souls. So this is the traditional Green-Black deck where you're just touching white for the Lingering Souls. Siege Rhino is a bit of a contentious creature in Modern. It's very, very good against some strategies, and against other strategies like Grixis, where you don't want to be tapping out 4 mana to get your Siege Rhino remanded. It's just, you really want it versus Burn and kind of Zoo strategies. It's not even that great in the mirror because most of the times the Tarmogoyf is trumping it.
So let me ask you this. Do you think he doesn't go to the school of the litmus test that you were talking about? Because you just said right there, it's a 4-drop, doesn't die to Bolt.
Doesn't die to
Abrupt. Doesn't Abrupt Decay. What's going on?
It's just that I think that, you're close to dying or dying a lot of the times on turn 4 in Modern. Okay. And to kind of just tap out for this, I mean, it's a solid value play, but to kind of tap out for a 4-mana Lightning Helix just to have it terminated end step, I don't know. I haven't made up a firm decision about Siege Rhino. I do like the streamlined nature of this deck and the Return to Dark Confidant. One of the big things when you play Siege Rhino is it kind of prices you out of playing Dark Confidant.
Yeah.
So it is kind of one or the other thing. And I think that running 3 main deck Kitchen Finks is kind of like a nice kind of in-between place to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've played this deck for a while. Before I played Boggles, it was Black Green X, whatever. We had Anger. Is that a Dora? yeah, Marshall Sutcliffe. Is that a Dora in GP San Diego? Good reference there. We watched that this morning. It was fantastic. I like to troll Mike every once in a while with some coverage stuff. But no, the big sell on this deck to me is still Dark Confident. And it's really tough because the format has gotten so aggressive. So, like, the cards that Dark Confident doesn't want to see are, like, the Affinity cards, doesn't want to see the Boggle cards. Any card that just, like, Burn especially. Because
so coming from... I actually like Dark Confidant against Boggles, and I like Dark Confidant. I mean, against Affinity? Not against Burn, but I do like Dark Confidant against Boggles. And
Affinity?
I think I like him against Affinity, too. You need to, like...
Like, I think it's great versus Infect.
Okay, so the thing about Affinity is that very rarely are they nickel and diming you. They're kind of dealing damage in these huge chunks, and you just need to be able to kind of keep refilling on your removal spells. So, okay. I don't know. The only matchups where Bob is an auto side out is against the super aggressive Zoo decks and the Burn decks.
Okay. What's Willie got going on here? I see a Duress.
Yeah, so...
One Duress? Is this just like he lost the bet and has to throw one in, or what?
I think there is a method to his madness here.
They couldn't even put the Saga artwork on?
So most black-green lists are going to be playing 4 Inquisition, just as the no life loss kind of being a good proactive thing against Burn. And you will typically see between 2 and 3 Thought Seizes. So Willie has the 2 Thought Seizes and a 1 main deck Duress. So he's kind of taking a calculated risk where, yeah, I'm not going to be able to take your big creature a lot of the times, but that doesn't matter because against stuff like Amulet, I just want to take your Summoner's Pact or your Amulet or whatever. So I think this split is totally reasonable. Okay. I have yet to have the Duress come back and bite me. Played about 20 games with the deck so far. So
okay, fair enough. Creatures, you went over the confidence. We talked about obviously the Tarmogoyf of 4 of every deck that plays. This card is playing 4.
Yeah.
Kitchen Finks, you alluded to that you like 3 copies. Traditionally, you've seen like 1, 2, maybe a 1 or 2 more in the sideboard.
So traditionally good against Burn, traditionally good against Zoo. I also think that it's really underrated against the Grixis variants too. Now it's going to be less good against Twin when they have a 1/4 blocker in the form of Deceiver Exarch, but against a Grixis control deck, like, they have to use 2 removal spells on the thing unless they have a Tasker in play, or this thing's just going to keep 3 in them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that this matchup is not very good. I think Grixis is favored.
I think it's close. Lingering Souls is a huge haymaker versus Grixis game 1, but I think the match Lingering Souls.
Lingering Souls, yeah. It depends on the Grixis list. Like, I've seen everything from Corey Burkhart not running 0 counter spells to the list that just popped out from the Invitational with VD as well as Jerry Thompson running Mana Leaks. So, depending on if they're running Electrolyzes, how many Murderous Cuts they're running, I think that can... I don't know. The blue is so strong to me. Like, being able to have the bolts to kill off, like, Dark Confidence and Scavenging Ooze, and the Terminates and Cuts... Like, I guess it all depends on exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, you have to have your removal lineup correctly if you kind of let a ooze get out of control. Interesting to note, only 2 oozes. You'll see typically between 2 and 4 oozes. I know Jacob Wilson was a fan of running 4 oozes in his Jund list that he played at the Players' Championship. I think 2 is where you want to be. Diminishing returns on them. I mean, it's an all-star in some matchups. Usually takes over the game, a late-game top deck. But you do not want to get ooze flooded because the second copy is just going to be a grizzly bear.
Okay, that makes sense. I like him a lot too. Just he eats obviously the graveyard, so that's a really help late game once they've gone through some of the removal against Grixis. And then also we kind of alluded to the Ley Line of the Voids with the black-green deck.
Yep.
Like, this card's just great versus Living End, great versus Storm, great versus all those.
It does give you a semblance of a prayer game one against Living End, indeed.
So we went over the hand destruction spells.
You want to touch on Big Papa Pump, Dana, the 2 of here, the legendary creature, before we move on?
Yeah, we get Big Papa Pump, huh?
Tassiper, okay. So, I mean... Yeah, so running 2 6-drops in your Dark Confidant deck is not as crazy as it sounds. I think that small downside is negated by the fact that you get to run Tarmogoyf number 5 and 6 here. That's essentially what he is.
Okay, fair enough. And this is a card too, like we talked about. We're just alluding to the matchup between Grixis. This is a card where I could see when you get to like 5th or 6th turn, because it's going to be grindy. You're going to get there. Dropping this for 1 mana and being able to activate is very big. Like, that's big game.
Charmelease number 5 and 6, and also Tasigur allows you to cast 2 spells in 1 turn, which is something that green-black decks kind of have a tough time kind of getting to the mid-game where you're able to cast 2 spells in 1 turn, and Tasigur really kind of affords you that opportunity.
Okay. All right, so we got through all the creatures here.
Yep.
Most of this, I want to say, is standard.
This is, you're going to see 6 or 7 discard spells, and then you are typically going to see 3 or 4 Path to Exiles. Sometimes you'll have a Go for the Throat thrown in there. And it seems to be that most people are playing 4 Abrupt Decays. I know Brad played 4 at the Players' Championship, and here you see Willie playing 4 in the mocks from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a staple. Every time I've ever played this deck, I felt I wanted 4. Yeah. It's just too good.
I've played 3 Decays, 4 Exile before. You know, when things like Tasigur and stuff are more prevalent, it's like definitely alluring to go with the more Path to Exiles. But Path to Exile, it's not a clean 1 mana removal spell. There is a real cost to playing Path to Exile. For example, when you Path to Exile a Dark Confidant against Jund, you're giving them 1 more land to turn their Raging Ravine on a turn early. So, I mean, giving your opponent a land in the early game is a huge, huge downside that I think people tend to overlook.
One of the things that I used to do, and I can see, like, maybe, you know, in this case, Willie doesn't think that it's necessary, is a card that I used to run, and he's got it in the sideboard. Is instead, if you're worried about the twin matchup, you could cut one of the Abrupt Decays for a Slaughter Pact. It does kind of what we talked about. You were just alluding to playing 2 spells in 1 turn, and allows you the ability to just blow your opponent out because you're tapped out. Yeah. And they're really put to the test, like, hey, does he have that 1 card?
I know Ari Lax was saying in his video this week, too, is that just when your opponent kind of knows that you have a Slaughter Pact, it just kind of changes the way they play the game inherently.
Yeah, it definitely does. I agree with that. So I could see that, but Abrupt Decay to me, the only matchups that it's bad in the matchups that you're already bad.
Yeah, I will say one thing about Slaughter Pact though. I have had actual nightmares about not being forgetting to pay for the pact on my upkeep. I've never done it at a big tournament, but I've definitely had like nightmares at a GP or something. And I forgot to pay for my pact on my upkeep, and you just lose the game.
It's not something that's
put the dice on top of your deck.
Put the needle on the record. Put the needle on the record, please. Yeah, we haven't seen it too much, but you know, with the rising of Bloom and basically becoming a tier 1 deck, we've seen some of that happen by some good players. You know what I mean? Even on camera, I saw it happen in one of the Star Cities in Dallas. One of my buddies there was playing in round 3, and it just forgot it and just lost that game because of it. He ended up winning the next 2. But
you'll Slaughter Pact something, then there's going to be like a million different game actions, then it comes back around to your upkeep, and you know, happens to the best.
All right, 4 Lilianas, no surprise here.
Yeah, so I've seen, I saw Brad played 3 Lilianas in his Players' Championship list. Between having played quite a bit of Abzan / Junk in Modern, I almost always want to be playing 4 Liliana, 4 Lingering Souls. I just think they're your best cards. Liliana is like one of the cards that is sided out most often, but it's just so powerful against such a broad swath of the metagame that I think you want to be playing the full play set.
Okay. And we talked about Lingering Souls. This has been a staple from the deck to... This is the reason why we're playing white.
It's one of the most powerful cards in Modern. It's just as simple as that. It's pressure, it buys you time, it hoses decks like Affinity and Infect, kind of one card that is able to kind of trade with 4 other cards. Just a fantastic card. Even, you see that he's not running something like a Gavany Township or a Vault of the Archangel here. It's just having the power kind of split up across the 4 different bodies. Just one of my favorite cards in the Modern format.
Yeah, I can look back at times with playing this deck. I'd always have 4 in my 75. Yep. Sometimes I'd even put 1 on the sideboard when I wanted to be a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but I wanted to have a little bit more removal, per se.
Not at its best versus Fast Combo or Tron, but pretty much against every other deck in Modern, Lingering Souls is going to be really, really solid for you.
All right. What stands out to you here with the lands? What is new? I want to.
So what stands out to me the most is that he's only playing 23 lands.
Okay.
So in most black-green decks, you're going to see between 24 and 25 lands. Now, the fact that he is not playing a 4-drop like Siege Rhino allows him to kind of cheat a little bit, and I think 23 lands, you're kind of most often going to be having like 3 lands in play throughout the course of a regular game. So normally what I normally like to do, I'm going to be following the Gospel of Edel this time, but I normally like to add an extra land, but have that land be like a utility land, whether it be a Ghost Quarter, whether it be a Gavany Township, a Vault of the Archangel. So kind of hedge in terms of flooding and, but having played, like I said, 20 games with the deck so far, 23 lands seems to be fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that usually people didn't have a problem with playing 25 lands is because you're running man lands. So in a sense, there's going to be games where you flood out, but Dark Confident helps with that.
Yep.
In addition to the fact that you have lands that you want to pump.
Absolutely.
I see here.
Absolutely. Dark Confidant is definitely one of the other factors that allows him to kind of cheat on the land a little bit here.
So the lands I see that he's got the man lands.
Well,
treetops.
You just skipping over the Shambling event.
I'm talking about the tried and true. The treetop
is definitely a proven commodity in Modern. Sometimes you'll see the Stirring Wildwood here.
That's the upgrade we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So instead of he's actually not playing the Stirring Wildwood because we're not playing. The only white card we're playing is Lingering Souls. So there's no rhinos or anything we need to be casting.
Okay.
So the ability to activate for 2 and having Trample, I think, makes Treetop a considerable better card than Stirring Wildwood if you don't need to fix your mana.
Yeah, I really do like Treetop as opposed to
does
all the other ones.
Does die to bolt, but being able to activate for 2 mana is so huge.
Yeah, the trade-off with him only playing Lingering Souls, the Treetops are definitely, you see them in the black-green X decks as a 3 or 4 of sometimes.
And the Trample is so relevant on this card.
Yeah. The one thing that, let me go into Shambling Event before I go further into what I wanted to just talk about.
Sure.
So this seems to me like the one that they just said, you know what, we're going to play this over Stirring Wildwood.
Yeah, so it is just having access to kind of incidental life gain like this is so powerful. And this thing, it comes into play tap, it fixes your mana. It doesn't block the Nexuses, and I don't think anyone's really playing Delver in Modern, but just Lifelink is such a crucial ability, especially in a deck with Dark Confidant.
Okay. I agree with that.
And if you're able to kind of clear the board and kind of, you take kind of an early rush or whatever, Shambling Event really allows you to crawl back into games.
Okay, well the thing that I wanted to talk about with Shambling Event and with having Treetops, I know you said you've only played 20 games, and I'd like to have an actual discussion with Willie. How has that affected your potential for turn 1, turn 2, curving out? We're down to 23 lands, so you're cutting 2 lands, and now you have 4 of those 23 lands.
Yeah, so
that just come to play tap flat.
That's an interesting point. So something to note: Abzan versus Jund is you don't have the Scar style fast land like Blackleaf Cliffs here.
Okay.
So interesting that you bring that up. Is I find myself usually kind of taking a turn off to kind of either drop a ETB tap land or just kind of fetch out a shock and sip tap to kind of preserve your life total. So yes, your mana is good in terms of being able to cast your spells, but in terms of taking 1 billion damage, you do kind of need to sequence stuff out and kind of be judicious, and usually involves taking a turn off.
Okay, enough on the mana. I'm more interested in the sideboard here because I see a couple things that I have not seen in an Abzan deck ever.
Okay.
So let's get into something that we have. Yeah, this is true. Let's start off with Engineer Explosive. This is usually a 1 of, sometimes a 2 of.
Yeah.
Why do you think he's playing 2?
So the reason he's playing 2, this card is at its best versus Zoo, Affinity, and Infect, I would say, right?
Okay.
And
all of the aggressive decks?
Yeah, I think that the real reason to be playing Engineered Explosives is it is a total haymaker versus the Merfolk matchup. Now, Merfolk is kind of waxes and wanes in popularity, but the majority of their deck is converted mana cost 2. So this is usually a 2 or 4, between a 2 and 4 for 1 against the Merfolk deck.
Is that typically a bad matchup?
I have found it to be a pretty bad matchup for Junk. Yeah, you don't have stuff like Lightning Bolt when you're pathing their lords and stuff. You're kind of ramping them to their master faster. Okay. So Engineered Explosives, a nice kind of catch-all sweeper. Not as broad as something like Damnation, but you can definitely engineer game states, pun intended, to kind of be more profitable for you.
Yeah, you mentioned Damnation. Sorry, I cut you off here.
No problem.
That's one that I'm really surprised isn't in here, because I've talked with Willie about this before, and one of his main reasons of not running Creeping Corrosion is because you have the ability to run Damnation, and it does not the same thing. It doesn't get rid of the cranial platings, and it doesn't get rid of the Springleaf Drums and the Mox Opals. But for all intents and purposes, for you to be able to have a 4-mana spell that clears the board in a lot of matchups, I think that's where he won. Like, that's where I'd want to be.
Yeah, you see, recently Damnation has kind of been a staple sideboard card, at least one of, in either Jund or Abzan. So
yeah, and I saw the Black Eldrazi deck playing it as well.
this is just a real concerted effort on Willie's part to kind of focus on converted mana cost 3 and below. He just wants to be a little more quicker than your average Jund or Abzan deck.
Abrupt Decay Wrath of God?
Sure.
Okay, I talked about Slaughter Pact earlier. We know what that's kind of in there for.
Anti-twin card, good against Bloom Titan. Also, very good against Affinity.
Okay.
You can have some blowout turns where they'll kind of go all in, equip the Ink Moth or whatever, and you just kind of,
Okay. Here's one of the ones I was talking about.
Sure.
Dramoka's Command.
Yeah.
Now this is Abzan aggro. This is the standard.
Yeah, this is between
Shambling
Vent and Dramoka's Command. We're playing a bunch of the standard also.
Tassiger, what's next? If we had Siege Rhino, we would only have to switch a few cards.
I do think that Dramoka's Command is a very, very solid modern playable card. Now, the reason I don't know Willie's reasoning behind this, but what I can see is that this is an anti-Karanos card that has broad applications elsewhere in the format. In Tarmogoyf Mirrors, it's also going to be excellent in the boarded games versus Amulet Bloom. Amulet is going to lean very heavily up on a Leyline of Sanctity, and typically you don't have many ways to interact for 2 mana to kill a Leyline of Sanctity in this deck. So, like I said, Dramoka's Command, anti-Karanos card that is kind of like this broad removal spell and can kind of, comes in against Boggles, comes in against Amulet Bloom, comes in Tarmogoyf Mirrors.
Yeah, definitely having both of the applications in like the mirror match even to me.
Burn too, being able to prevent the damage from a burn spell, have them sack an Eidolon or something very, very powerful.
Okay. So, all in all, we think that's good. One Stony Silence.
Yeah, this is... So, the only change that I am running personally between my version and Willie's is I am on 3 Leyline of the Voids, and I do have Stony Silence. I just feel Stony Silence has got to be one of, if not the most powerful sideboard cards in Modern.
Okay.
It's a harder to interact with Nullrod, and we know how good Nullrod is.
Just what you want to get on turn 2.
Now, it's not the be-all, end-all against Affinity. They can still have hands with Etch Champion or Master of Ethereum that it can still kill you. But if you're on the play, you drop a turn 2 Stony Silence, in general, it's going to be very difficult for the Affinity player to win.
Key word, or key phrase, on the play.
Indeed.
I played this. I played against Affinity, and I landed on the draw, turn 2 Stony Silence, and I was like, man, I can't even win the game. Like, turn 1, they just went out, and before I could play Stony Silence, there was a cranial plating already on a Vault Scourge, and I felt the game was just over. So I could see this being, just the one of, had that one extra card.
Very, very time sensitive. If it shows up just a tad bit late, that's, but... Okay. Some hands, it just, when it attacks Affinity's mana, shutting off their Darksteel Citadels and their Mox Opals, yeah.
So do you think that maybe he's running the one of this instead of a one of Damnation or one of Creeping Corrosion to maybe be a little bit more versatile toward decks like Lantern, decks like Tron, that are typically bad matchups for this deck as well?
Okay. I mean, I don't know how bad of a matchup Lantern is for this deck.
I was kind of referring to Tron, but I mean, like, it has applications against Lantern.
Absolutely.
Creeping Corrosion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Creeping Corrosion does have quite a bit of implication versus Lantern, too, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it does. It has that Vandal Blast. These are the same thing.
Yeah.
If they don't have it in their hand.
All right. Down to no half measures. The full playset of Fulminator Mage. Now, like you were saying before, unlike Grixis, unlike Jund, we're not recurring these with Kolaghan's Command. This is just a Stone Rain on wheels. This is the only reason you're playing it. Sometimes he beats for 2. A lot of the times he's just killing an Urza's Tower. But it's just the best land destruction effect available in Modern.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do with this guy, besides obviously, you know what he's in the deck for. He's there to take out Tron. He's there to disable. Even in the mirror matches, I bring him in because he was great against the man lands.
Yeah.
He just can pick those apart when you need him to, block Goyf, do whatever you need him to do. One of the cards that's not in this sideboard, it's kind of a pet card for me when I play this deck, is the Sword of Light and Shadow. And so
I was a huge Sword of Light and Shadow fan. And then this card called Kolaghan's Command got printed.
Yeah, I think Kolaghan's Command got printed and kind of like ruined everyone's day.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like that card is scaring me because of that card, I think there is a small percentage that Stoneforge Mystic could come back.
Yeah, and that is probably something that we should touch on briefly too. And I don't get too deep into it, but there is kind of a very kind of thunderous kind of buzz going around Stoneforge Mystic that's going to be coming off the ban list. Now, this is all rampant speculation, but, in conjunction with the GP promo, it just kind of has a lot of people convinced that they're going to unban Stoneforge. I know a lot of the teams that are testing for the Pro Tour are kind of preparing for the world in which Stoneforge is unbanned and what the best home for Stoneforge is in Modern.
Yeah.
Me personally, even with the presence of Kolaghan's Command, I still think Stoneforge Mystic is going to be too good for Modern. It's going to be format warping. We'll have to see. Stoneforge into Batterskull is such powerful interaction, even with stuff like 3 Kolaghan's Commands running around main deck.
And Suppression Field, of course, shut them down.
Sure.
Let's move back on to the last couple cards here.
Yeah, a card that you normally see in the main deck. So this is a concession to the curve, concession to trying to make Dark Confidant better, and it's only really a card that you want against Tron, against other Lingering Souls decks. Really kind of overcosted in terms of modern removal spells, but with the random upside of being able to kill 2 Tarmogoyfs in the mirror, or kill a Master of Waves. Being able to interact with, Tron's Planeswalkers. Not kind of an all-star traditional sideboard card. You're kind of paying full retail for this effect, but definitely an effect that you want in your 75.
Yeah, I think, you kind of alluded to the fact that, it's usually in the main deck. And whenever I play this deck, I love it in the main deck because it gets things you can't get with Abrupt Decay and can't get rid of elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the Planeswalkers... if they're dropping cards and stuff like that, you're probably in a bad shape. So, yeah, maybe getting rid of that one, that gives you a chance. But you're probably losing that game because they already have Tron and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But, being able to get rid of the simple things that you just can't otherwise is really good. Also, in the mirrors, you can have, your opponent Lingering Souls and Flashback.
Sure.
Sweep the board and then get yours out there.
Just as another way to kill a Tassiger or something. Sometimes, between you have the 3-Path Exiles main deck to kill opposing Tassigers, and, that's kind of it. You can set up the Liliana or whatever. But, Maelstrom Pulse, not an all-star, just kind of very solid at what it does, and just be aware that you are overpaying a little bit for this effect.
All right, let's talk about another modern card, I guess. Painful Truths as a one-of.
This card has been showing up as far back in formats as Legacy. I know Patrick Chapin and Tom Martell had played this card alongside Monastery Mentor at the Legacy GP in Seattle. You're really starting to see it pop up in Standard, and now it's making its way into Modern.
So we want this against the mirrors. We want this against the.
You want this against any deck that's not going ham on your life total. So you want this pretty much against every deck, except for Burn and Zoo. you want it against every deck.
Okay. So why is it not in the main deck? That's my next question. There's just no room, or what?
Yeah. So I guess Dark. It's also much better than a card like Dark Confidant against Grixis. I think Dark Confidant just kind of being on wheels, kind of being a mana cheaper. I don't know, maybe there is a world in which we live that Painful Truths, you start to see it in the main deck of the Grixis decks. Maybe Jund and Abzan is not too far behind.
I was actually just going to use that phrase because you use it a lot, a world where we live in, that we see Dark Confidant go away, and we see Siege Rhino Painful Truths be the curve out. Because essentially you're getting your way.
Truths, I think like Kitchen Finks, like we were talking about before, is kind of like a nice in-between area that it's going to offset the life loss, but kind of not be... I think the jump from 3 to 4 mana in Modern is so huge. The bar for playability for 3 drops is much, much lower than the bar for playability for 4 drops.
Especially
that your 4 drop needs to be so impactful.
And then we lose 2 cards because we'd have to go up to 25 lands if we're playing 4 drops, right? We wouldn't be able to get away with that, the 3 lands. So that makes sense.
And the ley lines. We touched on this before in the...
Last but not ley line?
The green-black Infect deck. Unreal in your opening hand against Grixis. In there for, like we said, the graveyard decks, the Living End, the Griselbrand. I see it as an anti-Grixis measure, because that cuts off their whole long game plan against you, makes them pay 6 mana for a Tasigur, turns their Snapcasters into Ambush Vipers. Definitely a time-sensitive card.
Makes sense on the 2.
I do like, I like having your Lilianas in the deck still against Grixis, so you're able to pitch one of these if you can top deck in the late game. But still, if it's not the end of the world. Sometimes you slam it on turn 4 and you're kind of able to fight against future Snapcasters and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that, like, at least my opinion, and I think the opinions of my peers would suggest that Grixis become the public enemy number 1. And it's kind of weird because it's done well, but it hasn't won a tournament.
Yes.
It has not actually just held up a trophy.
It is, a lot of the top players are drawn to it, number 1, because it's a very fun deck to play.
Okay.
And there's also infinite points of interaction with your opponent. There's so many decisions involved in a Grixis deck. Let me return my Snapcaster to my hand, and you discard a card, next turn, Snapcaster back this. So I went a long time without playing any explicit graveyard hate in my sideboard in Modern, and I kept losing to stuff like Living End, and here it's a way to attack the Grixis deck.
It's okay. Alright, so, that was kind of a rundown. We appreciate all the feedback, by the way, for people that are on the stream right now. We're going to have the video posted up later this week for those of you that maybe got in a little late. So we wanted to talk about a couple of the new decks, and then leaving off with... one of the decks that's been around the format ever since the start, and done by the person that, Willie Adel, the best player of this deck, the Black-Green X deck. So hopefully you've got to see a little bit of the new and a little bit of the old, give you a little preference of what's going on, or preface for this weekend.
Yeah.
I know you've been talking about Willie's deck. That's probably what you're going to be playing.
That's very likely, unless on the 10-hour car ride I can be convinced to suit up the Bogles. This is going to be my default deck. It is kind of like a generically... It's the type of deck that you're traditionally going to X4 tournament with. It's not as likely that you're going to spike a tournament and win the whole thing with this.
We're talking about this deck right here?
Yeah, the Black-Green is traditional. That it's more of a 50-50 strategy against the field.
Yeah, there's very few matchups where you're a dog, like a huge dog or a huge,
A huge favorite.
Yeah. I will be running traditionally bottles. It saddens me. Because I want to play something else, but I just can't think... I guess if I was going to play something...
You can touch on the Infect deck that you're working on real quick.
Okay, so everyone's talking about the Black-Green Infect deck. I am going to show you my version really quickly here. This is not Black-Green. This is... I call it Rugfect.
Oh, God.
Because they're splashing red. So those of you that saw me stream... Here, I'll sort it out here. Those of you that saw me stream last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, I was splashing red and trying Abbott because I wanted to have a long game. And one of the things I was losing to in Standard all the time was mono-red combo with Temur, Battle Rage, and Become Immense.
Yep.
So I thought about it, and I was like, man, this is a very powerful interaction. What deck could really be using this in Modern? And I thought Infect. And I thought there was a couple of reasons why I like this card. Traditionally, you don't see the extra splash. You just see Apostle's Blessing, which I have in the sideboard here. I want that for like the Grixis matchups and stuff where they have a ton of removal.
Sure.
And maybe a way to punch through. This, to me, was a combo piece that, unlike Apostle's Blessing, not only did it give a way to just get through damage, but it allowed to just kill people right away. Yeah. If you block incorrectly, you're dead.
And it also, I mean, the trample is turned on by pretty much every pump spell in the deck, right?
Yeah, so if I play turn 1 Glistener Elf or turn 2 Blighted Agent, all I have to do is either have Groundswell or Might of Corrosa, or have enough cards in the graveyard to cast Become Immense, which is realistic with running cards like Gemstone Mine, Fetch Lands, and Gitaxian Probe.
Sure.
And just having enough mana. Usually Become Immense, Temur, Battle Rage is a long game plan, but it allows me to have a very versatile plan of turn 3 kill. If they don't have the interaction, especially if it's Blighted Agent.
Yeah.
So for decks that don't have like that immediate, I can have turn 3 Might of Corrosa attack, and then Temur Battle Rage if I have to just kill them.
Yeah, you definitely catch people off guard. Traditionally, in lieu of Blighted Agent, traditionally blocking a Glistener Elf is a somewhat safe proposition in Modern. And, that kind of ended for me badly a couple times last night.
Yeah, when we were testing, it was very good. The other thing that I really liked about it, and was one of the things that drew me to the red because of Abbott, and funny enough, I'm not even playing Abbott anymore, is the fact that people play Infect, and I know this because Infect is sticks to me because I play Boggles, and every time I play Infect, I pretty much lose, almost every time. It's like the worst matchup that I can ever have. But what I notice when I play Infect is, and when I see other people play Infect, they take damage very loosely. Because they're like, you know what, this guy's on the damage plan.
Guilty.
I'm just going to fetch, shock, Thoughtseize, do all this.
Yeah.
The thing that Temur Battle Rage presents is between the Spellskite, and I know I had it against you last night when I had 4 Hierarchs, that's kind of like a dream. But even having 1 Hierarch, and if you're at 12, just attacking with the Hierarch, you going, okay, I go Become Immense Temur Battle Rage, and you're just dead.
Yeah.
And so that's an actual real line in this deck, whereas people are going to kill all your Infect guys, and it just allows you to have more of a mid game, I should say, to a deck that traditionally is just all in.
Totally agree.
So the reason why I'm not playing this deck is, for one, it's got a really tough Grixis matches. For 2, I haven't played enough, so I'm not comfortable with the sideboard yet. This is a rough sideboard. I don't have the Ancient Grudges anymore. I cut them. I have some other stuff. I think I'm playing Corruptors, the Infect guys.
Now, I had brought this up to you last night, and see if you can explain it to me again, I just don't... I saw the gentleman who top-aided the Invitational with Infect. I don't understand the Wall of Roots in the Infect sideboard.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure I grasp it 100% either, but what I like about Wall of Roots is, for one, it blocks. It's got a big butt, but the thing that I really like about it is this deck is only running 19 lands. The deck normally runs 20 lands. Okay. I didn't like Dryad Arbor at all, and you can see I'm not running Pendelhaven either. So being able to turn 1, let's say you're going to do Glistener Elf or Noble Hierarch, turn 2 Wall of Roots allows you to set up for a turn 3 playing, or if you have Inkmoth already, you can attack with Inkmoth and have enough mana throughout to be able to do a pump spell and still have
the protection,
because that's the huge thing.
Okay, I just feel that, I don't know, it just kind of doesn't feel particularly great at anything that it does, and I just don't know if it's the best utilization of sideboard slots.
Yeah, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I'm not playing the deck, because I'm not 100% sure on exactly what, but I saw a couple lists running this card, and I do think that in the zoo matchups, in the aggressive matchups, that it can be very good.
Sure.
You like sideboard scryings more than roots. Yeah, I have one of them in the main. Wall's okay versus zoo, but not super. All right, so I'd have to test it a lot more, and maybe it is something that I could cut.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Besides Wild Defiance and maybe more counter spells or reactive things, which I don't want to have too many of those that aren't in a sense pump spells. I don't know too much that I can put in there that's going to be able to deal.
Yeah, this is just kind of turning the notch up one more on the traditional blue-green Infect deck, kind of just being even more explosive and kind of more fragile at the same time.
One of the cards that's not in here that I actually have in the sideboard, I don't know why it's not on this one, is it Staticaster?
Yeah, that's just one of the best sideboard cards in Modern. One of the best sideboard cards in Legacy, for that matter.
Yeah, that card is great.
Fantastic Magic
off
card.
of, like, one of the decks that gives me problems is Elves because they have a quick clock. And in addition, I just put a bunch of guys out there. It's great against that. Great against the Mirror. Great against Lingering Souls.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? I just like it a lot. Carrying Call versus the grindy matchups. All right, like, I've heard people talk about that before. Putting 2 Infect tokens in this instance.
Hey, I've seen it steal games. Being 4 mana is...
Okay.
Yeah. But I've kind of liked the one of Carrying Call on the sideboard just as a kind of way to, like you said, steal games from the grindy matchups.
All right, well, we're going to put this on the back burner. I'm going to keep working on it. And maybe Detroit, I might unleash something that's not Boggles. I keep saying that I need to like not do well with Boggles in one tournament and then I'll get off of it. But I think Detroit, I'm going to actually aim for playing a deck that does not contain Slippery Boggle.
Yeah.
So we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
So let's back burner this. We're going to work on this some more. Wrapping this up for today, you know, I really appreciate you being here, Mike, helping out.
I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity coming on here. I had a lot of fun.
Definitely, those of you that are watching, and if you, like I said, if you didn't get all of it, we're going to put this on the site. It should be up probably this weekend, if not early next week. I love to hear all the questions. You can hit me up on BigWard28 on Twitter. You can email me, bigward28@yahoo.com. Kerwin's Game Store, you see it right up there. Please come check our website out. We got a bunch of articles going up there. Kevin Jones just posted his from the Post Players Championship. In addition to, we'll have some stuff going on there after this weekend. And
you have pre-releases coming up soon, right?
We do. We have pre-releases right now. I can pull it up here. We'll go to Kerwin's.
$5 off if you pre-register.
Yeah, so right here on our homepage, we have our featured videos. So we can go to the Daily Ward, and not only for Magic, we do have Pokemon Cities and stuff if you're into Pokemon. So we'll have like all 3 episodes that's going to be on here. In addition to, we have right now our newest edition, pre-release. So we're doing a format for those of you that didn't know. If you want to tell your friends that are in the area, or if you're in town, you just want to come down. We're doing the early reg, $5 off. It's simple. You just click on the event and put all your information in, just like you'd be going to a Grand Prix or Star City.
Constant Contact, same thing that Star City uses.
There you go.
Got
and
that official.
Put your DCI in and everything else, promo code, you'll get your $5 off, and you'll be locked in for that.
Boom. And this pre-release, I think they have an emphasis on 2-headed giant play as well, right?
Yeah, we have a couple different ones. We have them each day. So both Saturday and Sunday is going to have 2-headed giant.
I know that some of the cards and Oath are actually formatted for the 2-headed giant format, mentioning teammates and stuff, so...
RKO out of nowhere. We got the Randy Orton chat.
Not a 2-headed giant, not really my scene, but I know a lot of people love to come out and play that at the pre-release.
Yeah, and here's our article page. You see Kevin Jones here has his latest article on here, as he actually just trolls us through. And we'll close this show out with a clip.
Watch out!
Are you guys ready for this? Where is it? Oh my god.
You're punting here, Dan.
I am punting. Here we go. Pool. Alright, here we go. This is what Colgan Storm's Fury. I gotta do it one more time. Alright, thanks again, guys, for joining us.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Everyone have a safe new year. If you're going to drink lots of alcohol like myself, have a plan. And for those of you that are going to be watching Star City Games Cincinnati, you're going to see him rumble in the jungle with some goyfs, and I'm going to be just slipping around, dodge, dip, dive, duck, dodge. The 5 Ds of dodgeball, we're going to get him in there with some Daybreak Coronets. So until next week, we'll see you later.
Later, guys.